Thank you, Nascom, and thank you so much for being here. I can see the sparkling, event NASCOM taking place. More than I think close to 2,000 delegates in this massive place, and so obviously we have been discussing many things about fintech since morning, and we are going to add a different value to it and taking the conversation and the innovation ahead in the industry. Uh, to start with, let me tell you honestly that my job is very simple in two ways because one, I'm going to just ask questions. That's it. But on the other side, it's difficult because they're going to say what they want to say, no matter the question what I ask. So, yeah, so I mean, once upon a time, what happened is I was going to interview a politician in the 2014 campaign, and I told the politician that I want your views on this, 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 this. He says, no matter what question you ask, we are going to say what we have decided. so, so anyway, to start with, I will start with you, Sunny, because your view is very important. In fact, we have a very different panel. One is specifically looking at the reinsurance and handling risk. Second, Jaya is there who's can tell you on how to avoid the risk, prevent the risks, and Mr. Sunny who can tell you that what kind of risks happens in the legacy organizations and how do they look at the innovation. To start with the fintechs, which is a buzzing word right now, and revamping the industry, traditional institutions, Sunny, you tell me because you are representing a legacy institution. Tell me, how do you look at fintechs? What is that comes to your mind when you look at any fintechs, when he comes to you with his product presentation?
First of all, that we run digital transformation out of a different organization within the bank, and we are not legacy in that respect. Uh, so when we interact with fintechs, what we are looking for is like what is the unique thing they can bring to us, because the general feeling is that banks, especially public sector banks, cannot work with fintechs because there's a very complicated and complex process laid down and mandated by the government through CBC, etc. But that is actually not true, because even that policy, which is considered to be maybe by considered by many fintechs to be a villain, actually provides for working with companies like fintechs, because there is a specific provision which says that if you are a niche player, then we can work with you, okay, in that area. So the message out here is to fintechs is focus on something that no fintech has done before, and you will have a ready market. Uh, and apart from that, as banks, we have done a lot of work in encouraging fintechs. We have a specific startup engagement program where we work with fintechs very closely, and we have actually done quite a few of these engagements. In fact, I would specifically like to recall, if people remember Freedom Rewards, when it started out a few years back, they had zero customers. We were the first customer. Today, they have 1 out of 2 loyalty customers in the country is with Loyalty Rewards. So we have done a lot of work in this area, and we feel, and the reason why we are doing this is because they bring specific strengths and specific capabilities, competencies to the table.
Right. Okay.
And I think I've actually answered whatever I said. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Good one. Jay, I will come to you now, and you come with a remarkable experience not only from India but different countries, specifically from USA. And like Kunal was saying that some time back that we like to copy the global companies, and what global and foreigners do, we would like to copy them. Tell me something about you, about specifically the fintechs in India, which is trying to copy the USA or the foreign fintechs. Do you see that we are on the right path compared to the global innovation? Because every fintech is unique, that's what the story they tell, but we need something different. So how do you actually map the difference between USA, different countries, and India?
I think we should, one of the unique things we must do in fintechs is that we should stop aping what people do in the West. Because if you look at the Indian banking system as an example, we have very unique challenges that comes from a combination of problems that we have, with bulk of our population being unbanked, with the access to the markets being very low in most of those cities. And then you have a proliferation of problems which are quite unique to the Indian mindset. We are talking about what ails the Indian banking industry. and you would talk about situations such as NPAs. We would talk about situations of lack of having the right models. So our problems are quite unique, and therefore it does not make sense to take a global product and say, make it work for me.
Right.
It needs to be, we, especially from an ASCOM perspective, we are talking about make it in India and make it global, make it local, take it global. I
Wow.
think that's the mantra that most of the companies in the West are doing. And why should we ape that? And why should we not create products for a 1.3 billion country which has very unique problems in all aspects? That includes the banking industry, for example. So we need to create those products, take it global. If it is fits the global scenario with all the regulations, etc. Interestingly, India often happens to be a superset in terms of regulation. So you need to divest of some of the bells and whistles and make it work for certain other economies. It just makes a lot more sense to make it in India and take it global.
Right.
Because we are often a superset of the issues we have. We have loads of things in that direction. So I would rather say, look local, take it global.
Wow, interesting. I think after Make in India, this is the famous and the most interesting term that Jaya came with. You know, make it local and take it global. Anuj, you also carry a different experience and comes with a risk background. All the fintechs coming with different products, different ideas. At insurance, obviously, we have insurtech compared to fintech tech specifically. Uh, how do you actually measure the risks of this new innovation that the fintechs are bringing? Specifically, when you look at the reinsurance or your industry.
I think the due diligence process, when we look at the fintechs, don't change much from a traditional industry. I think one thing which we need to be very conscious of in our industry, whether it's banking or insurance, is that the biggest currency which we have as financial institutions is trust and reputation. And when we deal with this fintechs, we need to be very sure of the operational risk or the data privacy, which we were talking about in the last panel on. And then I think when it comes to fintech, I think it's very rare that you come across a fintech which has a product which fits to your user case or your problem completely. So I think it's more a partnership. You need to work with these fintechs, make them work for you, build up the product as you go along the journey. And then I think you use the motto as in fail fast and fail cheap. There will be fintechs which you go along on a journey and then you realize for one reason or the other, they don't work for you, whether from a compliance perspective or from a product perspective, and then you should be ready to let go.
Okay, interesting. Sunny, you said sometime back that the fintech should come with unique idea. At etbfsi.com, part of Economic Times, we do a lot of stories on fintechs. We give a platform and we have a special segment called Fintech Diary. And the good part is a lot of fintechs also call us and tell us, why don't you cover us? Whenever we speak to them, what is your story? Sir, we have a unique idea. We have a unique product. What are you doing? We are using artificial intelligence. Are you aware about it? I says, yes. It's just that I don't use it. I have mine. You said about unique products. So tell me, when you look at SBI, big bank, you're handling YONO. Again, you yourself giving a tough competition to the fintechs because they are coming with different products and you are coming with different products. But when you look at fintechs now, tell me, what is that you look into it that scalability is one thing that you look into it, and second thing is how important for you to look at the fintechs ki boss ye 1x se 10x kaise jayega? Is that a major challenge for you when you look at the fintechs?
So when we look at, definitely scalability is an issue. So because probably it's like growing up from boyhood to manhood when you actually enter into a bank like SBI. Right. The numbers itself are massive. So if I would not like to share these things here publicly, but the number of accounts that we open on a daily basis is probably the size of a small town. Right. And the number of users that we onboard every day on YONO is also similar. So when it is about scale, obviously it has to be something that a fintech can manage. Right. And that is an area where we find challenges because while they have, as I think somebody said in the previous panel, they have capabilities, they have ideas, they may have a product that works in a particular scenario, but when you try to scale it 100 times, 1,000 times, or 100,000 times, then there is sometimes a problem. So what we have done in the bank is we don't give end-to-end, we don't take a product end-to-end from them. We take a part of something that works. For example, we are working on a pre-approved loan for agriculture, this thing. It has not been done by any bank before. And no, we are working with a fintech which actually uses blockchain for giving some of the data which we use for selecting a customer for a pre-approved offer. So, but they see only a small part of this. They don't do the end-to-end solutioning for us. So that way, that is one way that we are de-risking the whole process.
So you're not basically convinced with the idea of scalability when they come to you.
It's not like that. Like for example, that is a serious concern. Like in terms of the market that they can bring to us or the number of customers they can handle, there is a concern. Like for example, we were talking to somebody for co-origination of a loans. So what they can bring to us is just half a days of loan portfolio that we do in an entire month. So what they are doing sourcing for another bank currently in India is just what we do in half a day. So it really doesn't add, is it very attractive? The proposition is not very attractive. So it is better to work with these fintechs on areas of their strength and built into our solution so that we can really scale up the way we can and then there is value for everyone. So that's the process that we are following.
Jay, I have a very important question. You partly touch, NPA issues and all, but when you are trying to revamp the traditional banking, and here I'm sure your experience come into place because you are into early warning signals and analyzing the risk and pivoting and taking the measures into it. When you look at perhaps SBI will not like these questions because I'm going to ask about NPA, not to you, but her. So, you look at the willful defaulters list, you look at the NPA lists, and you look at the many other issues like PMC Bank. We could not even resolve the basic issues even today after the existence of 60 years of strong banking in the country. Are we really ready for the innovation?
I think without innovation, we will not get anywhere in the space, is my very strong opinion on the matter. And it's more about, you touched upon a few areas. People say there's blockchain, how do I use it? I don't think that's the right approach because it's more from a perspective of how do I leverage this particular, can I use some technology to address my business issue, right? And you rightly pointed out in terms of an NPA, are we ready for it? What else should be done? I think without technology, those problems cannot be solved because it's incomprehensible for a human mind to analyze all the multiple decision points that is needed for intelligent credit decisioning process. Again, from an institutional perspective, the more data points you can, with more strength can you say no to a loan. Right. The more that you can point out earlier and say, you know what, he didn't go from a great customer to a really bad customer overnight. And most of the NPA issues come because of large loan defaulters. It's not the mom and pop shops, it's not the retailers that actually trouble the bank. They're the best people who pay the loans on time. So from a perspective of looking at how do you prevent those big issues from happening, it's two things. One is the availability of the right data to make the right decisions. Right. And second is a component that comes from holding the data as hostage and saying, you know what, I have the data points. Now, tell me why I should not proceed with the loan. It puts the power back into the hands of the bankers is what I feel. And again, coming back to a question you said, it's the fear of missing out in the banking situation of saying, oh, I'm not AI ready. I think that's where you need to look at it from a perspective of saying, how can an artificial intelligence engine help me to make this decision better than I could as a human being? Because when you have 3,000 data points that come from multiple sources, it's not possible for a human brain to synthesize all of that in a logical order and provide, most importantly, unbiased decision making, which is what we need and which is the core of our problem in the banking industry. It is the word unbiased. I underline it over and over again in bold because that comes from the ability of technology and that's not replaceable. Okay. So again, coming back just to wind it up, is the question of AI. Like you take data from big data sources, you marry it with traditional data sources. If you can pattern match and then say, you know what, this person was in the news for the wrong reasons, something is an alert. Right. Then the bus alarm goes off, then you have a point that before the transaction happens, you need to do something, not post-mortem. Right.
just to add to Jaya's point, actually, and I think my personal view, I think the market is ripe for the technology. For the point which Jaya made, I think the amount of information out there which you can have on your creditors and your counterparties, it's just not humanly possible for a traditional credit officer to sit there and a loan officer. But at the same time, if you look at the other way around, I think my last UBS, we were on the front page of Financial Times more often than not for the wrong reasons. And I think we are, as a bank, we were using a lot of fintechs to actually look at the human psychology of the traders and the loan portfolios to catch something amiss in how we trade and how the traders are trading, to catch things like frauds, the things like which you talk about PMC. So yes, I think the technology has a very huge important role to play in risk management in general.
So, Jaya, is that the point that now the fintechs, those who can come with a great innovation specifically, because lending is one of the fundamental and the most potential aspect of banking. So the fintechs who comes with the innovation specifically into finding who's the next or potential Vijay Mallya. I mean, if any fintech has the innovation or a technology to find out who's going to be the next Vijay Mallya, will have a better future in the banking space, in the traditional banking space?
Absolutely, yes, because it's more about where is the maximum leakage. What causes the fundamental issues in our banking system? Again, going back to it, it's not the small mom and pop shops that we need to be so worried about. It's the big drain on the financial system comes from very few players. It's the Pareto principle, right? It's the 20 people that cost either are your greatest customers or your worst customers, and you segment it, it's the top 2%. And they are the biggest customers, and they are the ones who are the willful defaulters as well. And it's more comes to in lending, it comes to the ability and willingness to pay, right? And it's more the willingness to pay, that's a problem for us.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
Just
please.
to add to that, see, there's a lot of work already being done on model-driven lending.
Yeah.
Right.
And there, what happens is there are two things. One is that if there is any problem found, like in like suppose there is a certain rule that is leading to a delinquency.
True.
So frequent review and tweaking of these rules can help you to build a portfolio of a very large sum, like we have already done, with delinquency ratios of less than 0.02 and that sort of numbers.
Right.
Now, the books that are built based on these are very large,
Right.
but they don't get the same publicity as a loan default by Vijay Mallya. So that is the problem of perception,
Right.
and that is something that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Anuj, I will come to you. I wanted to ask you this question because reinsurance is again like a banking, a very traditional industry, and it comes, via, there is one insurance company, then they will reinsurance their product or something like that. Considering this entire, the ecosystem of reinsurance, how do you look at fintechs in terms of partnerships, collaborations, and innovation? Where exactly they can come with an innovation? Because I understand the insurance tech are coming with innovation specifically to help and make the products like health insurance or motor insurance very seamless. But in reinsurance side, where is the scope or demand for fintechs?
Actually, a lot of different places, and I think if you start closer to what I do from a risk management, I think we have already talked about how fintechs can play a role in risk management, which is quite close to the traditional banking environment. But a lot of other place which we are using fintechs quite a bit in the reinsurance industry is during the renewal process. So currently, if you look at the numbers of Swiss Re, we at the renewal time in November and December, we are looking close to 10,000 to 20,000 renewals across our insurance landscape with a handful of underwriters. And as again, till now, I think that there hasn't been a very good way to look at the profitability of those different clients, and you're treating each and every renewal at the same level. And that's where fintechs come into with the data analytics and the big data, and we are using that to use the 80-20 rule. What are the top 20 clients in terms of my revenue forecast? How do I slice and dice that particular pool to look at my most profitable clients? And I think the third one is just accessing the new risk pools. The world has become a lot more riskier, if I can say that, in terms of whether it's cyber risk or terrorism risk, and in different parts of the world. Traditionally, we have focused on the developed markets, but there are new risks in different parts of the world. And we are looking at fintechs to gain access to those risk pools because we are not closer to those counterparties. The fintechs are, they can reach our customers much better, and maybe cutting down those brokers in between the value chain and blockchain, what Sunny was talking about, by making it a lot more transparent in the market and reducing the cost of the whole insurance market.
Interesting. Sunny, my question to you is now specifically about the changes and the challenges an organization face. The CEO of a global bank called ANZ once said that, because of we are a big bank, we have many challenges while adopting innovation because it's like an oil tanker. You cannot take a turn immediately. It takes time. Obviously, SBI also belongs to that category. So you have been doing a lot of innovation. What are the major challenges that you face in your cultural traditional system?
So, coming from a practical perspective, like we are one of those super heavy tankers, and obviously taking a swift turn is a difficult thing. So recently we innovated in one product that was done internally. That is, we brought out a product that disrupts the plastic card. So we have something called Yono Cash, which on the mobile itself, you can generate a code which you can use at an ATM for withdrawing cash using a dynamic pin. Absolutely safe, no risk of any skimming or cloning or any such stuff. And you would think that people would just lap it up. It doesn't happen like that, because changing behaviors and culture for both internally and externally, the internal customer or the external one, is the biggest challenge that anyone would face. But if, as somebody was talking in an earlier panel, there would be a period when you actually have to push. And then once a product reaches an inflection point, you would find adoption really like going viral. So being a digital product, that's a natural way for it to happen. And that is what we are seeing now. People have, like, as and when a story breaks out in the papers of data floating around of customers and ATM cards, you'll find suddenly adoption going up on those specific days itself, and that continues. There's a ratcheting effect. So that happens and continues. So this is the biggest challenge, changing loyalties to old products. That is the biggest problem that we face. Even internally, you have sometimes staff who say, no, I'm so used to this, I don't want to change. I don't want to move. So that is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge that we face.
Okay, I think thank you so much, for giving that really meaningful answer in terms of changes and challenges, because that's where in fintechs actually look at the things that how we can make a difference. Jaya, again, on a regulatory side, I will need your perspective here, because obviously there are many fintechs, they are not regulated. There are certain guidelines which RBI has placed in. But progressive regulation is very important for any innovation that comes into the picture. If I ask you straightforward, are regulators in India very progressive? Do they, or if I make it very simple, are they really clear about innovation that the fintechs are doing?
See, as long as there are multiple segments to that answer. I just came from chairing the roundtable for fintechs just before the session. And there was the angst in terms of saying we created one of the best cryptocurrency exchanges in India. And the angst was coming from, it's doing so well in other places. But, just because we are a startup and we are in an innovative field, does that make us crooks? Was the question that the panelist posed. And he said, we need intervention from industry bodies to help us understand that. We know there's an element of risk, but where does that end? Was a question that was asked. I'm segmenting that again because there is a technology that we talk about in terms of RegTech, which helps you do your daily actions better, which is the concept of more the traditional banking concept, right? I think in that spectrum, regulation is ready. In fact, when you look at it, RBI comes up with guidelines, and as long as if you're a fintech and you fit in that gap of saying, here is a regulation, and coming back to George's point, it was also more in terms of, can you get there? Can we use a fintech to get there faster? Let's say there is a regulatory RBI guideline today, and you need to get that implemented within the close of this financial year. And the question is, elephants can't dance. There's a reason for it. So if you can use the fintech to get there to meet that regulatory need quicker, faster, better, and you are convinced that that makes all your guidelines, then why not? So, from a perspective of flipping that question over, is to say that they're ready in pockets. It's just a question of, is that too innovative for me, or is that going to help my day-to-day life be better? And the answer to that is, it's ready from a perspective of, making my daily experience better, but it's not ready in terms of a lot of the innovative aspects of what comes out in a lot of the Western pockets of the world, where that adoption and the lack of issues surrounding or the myth around what it's going to do, I think they move there faster than we do.
Interesting again, but don't you think that the somehow the sandbox policies that the Singapore or many other countries have, because when you spoke about the cryptocurrency, the first thing that the RBI sandbox policy says that no innovation is, what you can say, allowed in sandbox, specifically into cryptocurrency. Does that somehow discourage the fintechs in India?
Absolutely. Again, I'm segmenting it. Now, if you talk about, let's say it's a new fintech and you need access to data from banks, you're not going to have access to that. In the sense of testing traditional or white spaces in traditional banking and using the sandbox to get there, I think it's a great step in the right direction from an RBI perspective to even say we are being innovative enough. So I think there's an applause for that aspect of saying we are now opening doors, we are kind of mirroring what exists outside. But I think it's more in terms of like going back to the question in terms of the more innovative concepts of what's in it. I don't understand it and therefore I don't believe it. It's the concept. And I think that's a learning. It's more from education from a perspective of a lot of different bodies. And I would add what we lack in our Indian ecosystem is that it's a combination in let's say US for an example. You have academicians, you have the universities working in tandem with educating the government on what's a necessity. You have corporates working with academia to get the right talent and the right innovation and testing it. We have the corporates and the banks willing to lend themselves to a particular encryption-based technology to open up data. So it's not one person that's responsible for it all. Right. It's an ecosystem of players that come together to solve the problem. And as long as we encourage that ecosystem in India, that's when we would have truly arrived. Otherwise, we are getting funding from the right sources. It's more funding for a few sources, which are more the tested models. And a lot of what is the myth or something that I don't understand just gets missed. Right. And fintechs is all about scaling there, getting there quicker, faster, better before everybody else. Right. And if you watch to wait what is happening outside, we would have missed the boat. And that's something we need to invest on.
Right. Sunny, one more question here specifically since Jaya spoke about regulation. Does it come easy to you in terms of innovation, digital acquisition or something because you have a banking license already, you are a bank specifically about that compared to fintechs?
I would guess so, because as somebody was saying, it's about like what sort of customer pool do you have, what sort of customer base you have. And when you're starting with a ready customer base, which runs in millions, obviously you have a first mover or a better advantage compared to a fintech. Now, one thing that we should remember is you are seeing a success story after many years of hard work, and that's when it becomes famous. So you have not seen Amazon when it had a single web page just designed by some coder, just had a very simple, very elementary page. Right. You are seeing the successful Amazon of today. So there is a lot of hard work that has gone between those two dates. Right. And obviously, yes, there is a curve that each fintech has to traverse. Right. And obviously, banks which have a ready customer pool have an advantage here.
Right. Anuj, any comment on the regulations, progressive innovations?
I think from my perspective, and I'm new to the Indian ecosystem, like personally, I think the amount of fintech growth which we see in India, it's nowhere. You can't compare it to what you see in UK. Like UK is so far behind right now. Like when I came here, I knew the biggest thing in UK at that point of time was still the orange credit card that Monzo had come up with. Isn't it? That was the biggest talk of the town, isn't it? And now you look at PhonePe and Paytm, and I can't imagine my life. And in my view, when I think about regulation, I think a little bit friction between regulators and industry is always good. I think that's the role which regulators play in the market, and especially in the fintech market. I think a little bit of slow growth, but the right growth is the need of the market, so that you don't have cases like PMC and all the other things which we talk about. But I think India is ripe. I think all the conversations which Jaya was talking about are happening in the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is developing. So
I think with some meaningful insights, I don't mind to take one or two questions quickly. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and keep the question small because I have three different data points to touch upon. The recent one being regulation. I think, Anuj, I also operate in the London market, so I know Monzo and how the Revoluts of the world have grown up. But I personally feel that in the Indian context, I still see a very uneven playing field with the fintechs and the banks. Fintechs are always left, especially on the B2B side, at the mercy of the banks, who to approach, follow their timeline. So I just feel if that sort of a level playing field can be pushed from the fintech so that they are not just left out there, that's personally what I feel can be improved. Uh, on the second bit, I think which you also mentioned, and I think Sunny, you also mentioned, most of the banks and financial institutions you see in India are more solution oriented rather than product oriented. So you expect the fintech to develop something proprietary for you, and as soon as an investor I see that, I stop investing in that company, because then you are getting focused on just one big client. You can't productize that. So I think that's another thing. And the last bit where Sunny, you mentioned that as a small fintech you can only service my 1.5 days or half days this much. I think to flip it around for a startup, I need a bank to first prove me out and work with it like an established. As soon as I put a logo of SBI as one of my clients, I do get a pull from the investor who put in the money, and it goes around that. So I think the one of the key problems which I face, and I'm trying to bat from the startup's point, is the infrastructure at the banks are not tuned to the point where you can say literally, let me dissect Bangalore into 4 different portions. You take 1/4 of it and prove your model on that so that I can see the results and then move across. Because as a startup, you can't expect them on day zero to now start working with such volume. So I feel there are different parts to it, which from a fintech side, it's hard. But yeah, those were my points.
no, I agree, and I think I think the banks need to start looking at fintechs as a partnership. I don't think it's a me versus them kind of a thing. I think the market is big enough for all of them. I think the banks will. I think what Kunal was saying in his speech, that banks can leverage fintechs quite a bit to increase their reach and reach their customers. And I see the problem which you are talking about. I think when Sunny was talking about scalability, maybe I had a slightly different point of view on that. That yes, fintechs will never have that scalability on day zero. Isn't it? It's again about partnership. You work with them, and at some point of time, yes, if the model succeeds, then you scale it up to reach out the market. But yeah.
Precisely. So, the example I told you was not about a product. It's about co-originating a loan where it is not actually that the fintech is coming out with a specific product for that. Okay. So, but really, like, what can banks offer a fintech, and what can fintech offer banks? So yes, it is definitely a partnership. There is we are not competitors. Obviously, we can't be currently, at least at wherever we are, both whether bank or a fintech, we are not really competing for the same type of business pool. What do banks offer to fintechs? It's precisely the learning opportunities you get. So when you operate on a large scale, so it is the sort of insights you get would help you to design products which you can then offer to other customers. That is, I think, the biggest benefit for this partnership that a fintech can get. So you told about the marquee effect, like if you have the SBA symbol or some of the other banks here, an ICICI Bank symbol. So yes, that does help, but that helps only in the short term. That may help to bring a customer to you. But if your product is not good, or if your process is not good, then that's not going to help you further beyond that.
Just on the closing thought, I think and again, just trying to bat from the startup's point of view, this partnership works when it's when both the parties have an equal say and it's more like an equal partnership, because the banks have to learn from the startups as much as the startups have to learn from the bank. If you just have the UI point of view.
Yeah. I mean, that was a bit quick one.
That's
Yeah.
somehow
Yeah, yeah.
If I may
Okay.
just add to
Yeah.
that, that's a valid point, but it's the question of trust is earned, not
Yeah.
given, right? So, from a perspective of how do you get there, the first one is always the hardest. Whether you're a fintech or any other startup, it's the first thing. Do you have a unique value that the bank should look up and say, hey, you know what, they could do it faster and better than what I could do? So, I think from a perspective of a fintech that's grown through that cycle, it's the first one that's always the hardest. And after that, it's more a question of can you, I mean, it's almost, then it becomes a partnership because you're going to get me something that I can't do otherwise. And the answer that you didn't ask, the question you didn't answer, but which was on your mind, was more about the can I get the data to kind of say it actually works, which is the question of the sandbox that we're talking about, which is more about how do I prove that it's going to work? Because I earned that trust by saying it has worked for me with the kind of data not from you, but similar banks that have provided the data that makes it work for me.
I think that's the last and quick question.
My question
Yeah.
to Sunny, so as a taxpayer, it pains me when I see the news that 70,000 crores of money is being put into PSU banks. So do you think the banks in India have been a bit laggard in solving these NPA problems by using the fintech, considering India is the third largest fintech ecosystem or the startup ecosystem in the world now?
So why banks are going through a bout of recapitalization is because of historical reasons, and business models have changed. The world has changed. So NP is actually legacy. There is always a lag effect, and what is being like if banks need more capital, it's because of the reasons like one they need they need this to grow. In fact, all banks are going to, especially public sector ones, are going to go through a huge process of mergers in the next 2 years, and the dust will settle, and only then you will be actually seeing what the contours of Indian banking would be. We have already gone through that in SBI. We did a 6-bank merger in 2017, and it worked very well for us. I feel that this whole process of consolidation will really help in answering this problem of NPAs, where today you have so much of like small bit players just competing with each other. And again, as somebody said in an earlier session, like as the market matures, you will settle down into 2 or 3 large players in that each field. So that is something that's also going to happen in the Indian banking industry.
Hi.
Okay,
One,
sure.
one last thought. Given that this whole NASCOM event, we are focusing on scaling at speed, right? Would really want the thoughts from all the panelists from a fintech standpoint, working with traditional banks. One thought from each of you on how could we look at scaling at speed?
I think I'll probably give the fintech perspective on what's needed. It's more about, it's most banks, like we talked about NPA issue earlier in the question that you had asked. I'll take that as an example. Most banks traditionally in India, point probably slightly differing, is that they try to do it themselves. In a sense, they said, what is the guideline? What's the interpretation? There was 1 year lost in figuring out whether we need to adopt that or not. Once it's a good thing to have, it's more about what are the fintechs or what are the other things out there that can help me meet those guidelines faster and quicker. Had that happened, the scaling would have happened, let's say, in that particular segment 3 years before. So it's more about, are we kind of waiting to see, can I do it myself? Are we waiting to see that, what's the right time? Do we need to adopt that or not? And precious time and precious money in terms of the whole ecosystem of missed opportunities exists. In every business, there's a sunk cost. And that sunk cost is the problem, which is an opportunity for the fintechs. To get to your 10x in scale, it needs to be, here is a problem. Who's the best person to solve it? Can I get them on day one? If that is there, our 10x scale will happen automatically. And second, to address it's some of the angst that comes out is more about how do we get the regulation to trust earlier, provided all the parameters are met, is something that, again, from an ecosystem perspective, we need to work to get there quicker and faster.
Sunny, you want to add?
Yeah, so Shalini, to answer your question, first of all, you can't just divide banks into legacy and non-legacy banks. Okay. So, you can have, if the definition is like a private sector is a non-legacy and a public sector is a legacy bank, that also may not be really true. So the first thing is that there will be always a set of banks which are moving forward. They're leaving their past behind. They are transforming. And if you're not doing that digitally today, then you will probably be, you'll end up not being there in the market a few years later. So there is a lot of work happening here. And therefore, there is a huge scope and potential for fintechs to partner with banks. Going forward, in all areas where banks are venturing into, like doing, whether it's just NPA or anything else, lending, whether we are doing cross-selling, upselling, anything, you would need fintechs to work with you. And that is why there's huge potential for partnership with fintechs across all types of areas or technologies, and also all across the country. So if you have a good idea, I'm sure any bank will look at it. If you don't, then you will probably then not get the market.
Anuj, do you also want to quickly make a comment on that?
Maybe not from a banking perspective, but yes, I think the market is, there are a lot of problems to be solved in the banking system or the insurance system, whether it comes to risk management or other. I think maybe I disagree a little bit with not disagree completely, but I think in the fintech system, I think one product will never fit best everything when you see in the banking platform. So yes, customization is needed, and that's where you can scale up. But yeah, I agree. I think just completely changing the product is not the way to go. But I think the fintechs needs to have an open mind to customize their product based on the individual needs of the different banking partners. And
Great. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Anuj. Thank you so much, Jaya. Thank you so much, Sunny, for sharing your remarkable perspective. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to us very patiently.